What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have quite a bit to talk about, such as the U.S. Women's Volleyball Olympic team has been released. Which 12 players are going to be heading down to Tokyo to represent the good old US of A? And who are also the reserves? Also, it's the last week of the regular season in the NVA. Yes, the NVA, not the NBA, the NVA. Which teams are looking like they're going to be winning their respective conference? We'll have to find out in a little bit. Also, Miracosta, to my small dismay, defeated my Newport Harbor Sailors in the CIF Southern Section Division I Championship. But honestly, they earned it. I can't badmouth them. So I'll be talking about that on a little bit of story time with Teran. Also, we have more NCAA transfer news, as we have some big-name players that are going to be taking that fifth year, and we also have some other big-name players heading to several different teams. Also, we have the Volleyball Nations League, as the U.S. women continue to just dominate. How good are they doing? Find out that and more on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful afternoon or evening, depending on where you're listening. I appreciate you all tuning in and listening to episode 93 of Set Point. And I'm not even going to say what I normally say in the introduction, but without any further delay, let's get on into some volleyball action. But first, we have ourselves a word from our sponsor. iSports Radio is sponsored by the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow Southern California Warriors on Twitter at SoCal Warriors. You can follow them on Instagram at Southern California _Warriors. And on Facebook, if you just go to the search bar and look up the word Southern, then the word California, and then the word Warriors, you will find the Southern California Warriors are on there, and all you just need to do is hit that little search option, and then you'll be able to like them and follow them. So thank you to Southern California Warriors for being the official sponsor of iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And you can follow iSports Radio on Twitter and Instagram at iEsportsRadio. And then if you go to Facebook and you see the black and white logo and you click on it through the search bar, then you will definitely be able to follow them and like them on Facebook. And you can also check out iSports Radio's website, www.isportsradio.com, to check out all of our podcasters, our past guests, and what shows are going to be coming up. And we even have a blog site as well. And if you are willing to submit something, definitely do let Mike Pat, our editor, know, as he definitely would love anyone's input when it comes to sports, because we're all a bunch of sports fans in the sports world that want to share their opinion. Speaking, and back to the Southern California Warriors, if you are 18 and over and are interested to compete with a great group of men, contact them and allow me to see where to look for the contact info. So you can contact Coach Okalani Talfaima, I probably butchered that last name, but I digress. You can contact head coach Akalani at 760-586-3293. That number again for the head coach is 760-586-3293. Or you could email him at Akalani at sosd.us. That email again is Akalani, OKALANI, at sosd.us. So once again, the Southern California Warriors are looking to add some high-character, committed, talented players to their roster. And you can definitely join the roster if you are 18 and older. So definitely do check it out if you want to be a part of a great semi-pro organization, especially for those of you in California. So once again, thank you to Southern California Warriors for being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio. And we appreciate you. So now let's get on to the volleyball action. So now let's just jump into some story time with Teran. So last Friday, the CIF Southern Section Division I Boys Volleyball Championship happened. It was between my alma mater, Newport Harbor, and Mira Costa. These two teams are basically rivals. It's basically the Orange County versus Los Angeles County rivalry. And these two teams actually met in the finals 2 years ago, where Newport Harbor actually beat them, winning their first CIF championship since 1999. So this was kind of Mira Costa's redemption for a chance to win their first championship since 2012. Yeah, it's been that long. I mean, it hasn't been as long as Newport Harbor's drought, but it is what it is. So the first set, it looked like it was going to be a tight set, and then after Mira Costa crossed 10 points, they basically just ran away with the set. Like, after it was like 10-9, they outscored Newport Harbor 15-5. 15-5, I want to say. Yeah, 15-5, and then they took the first set 25-14, and it was just not fun. As we say hello to Davidson Crooks in the chat room, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Definitely check out Fast Break every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And also we say hello to Adam Karnick, who just wrapped up his show, Chi-Town Weekly. That goes on an hour before this show, if it goes on a Monday. But every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, and 7 p.m. Eastern Time, you could check out Adam Karnick and Chi-Town Weekly. It's some of the best Chicago sports talk you will hear. So definitely check out those two shows on IE Sports Radio. Now let's get back to the volleyball action. So the first set was a complete dud for Newport Harbor. Then the second set, Newport Harbor started to let the game come to them. They weren't making too many mistakes. They were blocking the ball well. They were passing the ball better. They were doing everything better than they did the first set. And it looked as if they were actually going to cruise through that set, kind of like how they did against Loyola. Then Mira Costa started to get hot, and they managed to string together multiple forms of points, whether it was via Newport Harbor's errors, or whether it was their great kills or their blocks at the net. That's something Mira Costa really did well when it came to. They blocked the ball really well, because they have such a tall team, and most of those kids are Division I bound seniors, while Newport Harbor, unfortunately, only has one Division I bound senior. But I digress. So Mira Costa eventually took the lead at 22-18, and it looked as if Mira Costa was going to actually come back and take the set. And then Newport Harbor managed to outscore Mira Costa 7-1. They went on a 7-1 run, and they took the second set 25-23. And that wasn't the first time Newport Harbor's taken a close set off of Mira Costa. In the second regular season matchup between those two teams, Newport Harbor actually took a close set against Mira Costa, winning it 37-35. Yes, that's how far it was past the 25-point mark range. And then they also won another close set in the second meeting, 26-24. But that wasn't really a comeback. That was actually Newport Harbor leading late in the set and then staving off Mira Costa. So it wasn't surprising that Newport Harbor won that second set in comeback fashion, but it kind of was a little weird that Costa just let up, and that's kind of not like them, but it is what it is. So the third set was a totally different set. Mira Costa never trailed, and they straight up just punched Newport Harbor in the mouth. Like, I thought it was going to be the exact opposite. I thought Newport Harbor was going to ride the momentum and just take a 2-1 lead after the third set. But unfortunately, Miracosta won that third set in convincing fashion, 25-13. Hardly anything went correct for Newport Harbor. Nothing really went their way. It was pretty disastrous. And then the fourth set, Newport Harbor got off to another slow start, and they tried to rally back. Like, they got to within, I think, 3 points, but it just wasn't enough. And eventually Miracosta won off of a kill from the left side, and that was the match right there. And it's unfortunate that Newport Harbor's reign as CIF champion came to an end. But honestly, if there was a team that I wanted to see win CIF other than Newport Harbor, it was Miracosta, because that with how much that team has been through and their coach has been through, it's absolutely amazing. And I respect their coach. The head coach of Miracosta is Avery Drost, who was actually a professional beach volleyball player. So I didn't actually mention that, but he is a great overall guy, great family man, and I have nothing but respect for him. And you have to take it back to 2019. So let's hop in our time machine and see what happened back in 2019. So 2019, back when there was no pandemic, we didn't have to wear masks, and there was no COVID. Newport Harbor finished the season 39-1. They had beaten Miracosta 4 times that season, one in a regular season best-of-5 matchup, one in a best-of-3 tournament matchup, one in the CIF Southern Section Championship, and then one in the SoCal Regional Playoffs, which that's basically state, but I digress. So that was pretty much what happened with Miracosta against Newport Harbor. But it kind of got worse for Miracosta. Like, they were basically runner-up to Newport Harbor in mostly everything, except for league. They don't play in the same league, but I digress. So it got worse for Miracosta. Their head coach, Avery Drost, found out that his beach partner at the time actually passed away because I don't want to get into it, but his beach partner passed away. It was very heartbreaking for him. He basically had to, and it gets worse for that. He had to actually play in a tournament. I don't know where the tournament was. I think it was out of state. And then he had to fly all the way back, I think on a red-eye, to coach his team in the SoCal Regionals, which wound up being a disaster. And it was just a major whirlwind for Avery Drost, and it was just unbelievable. So if you're Avery Drost, I gotta commend you, because you have to have a lot of mental toughness, because everything that just happened just blew up in his face. Like, his beach partner passed away, his team lost in the championship, 2 championships in the past 2 weeks, and it really just sucked for him. But I commend him, because he has a family, and he has his wife, and it's absolutely amazing. And his team got pizza at the end of the match, so I gotta throw that in there. But now let's hop over to 2020. So jumping over to 2020 when it comes to Miracosta, Miracosta was probably the heavy favorite to win the CIF Southern Section Championship. They had 8 Division I bound seniors, and it looked like their team was looking very talented. They had just won the prestigious Best of the West tournament, which is probably the best tournament in most of the nation, as a lot of the teams from mostly California, but all over the world, come over to play in San Diego. And Miracosta won that tournament. They had beaten Corona Del Mar in the final of the tournament. Everything was looking really good, and then unfortunately COVID-19 happened, and then their season got canceled, and unfortunately Miracosta was unable to prove to everybody that they were going to win the CIF Southern Section Championship, and Miracosta returned quite a bit of players on that team. Again, when you have 8 Division I bound seniors, that's when you know your team is legit. So, unfortunately for Miracosta, they were unable to prove that because COVID took a nice doo-doo all over everything. But the same can be said for every other senior team that was being played all over the world. So, there's that. Then we fast forward to 2021. It was basically an abbreviated season. It was a shortened season. It wasn't like a long season. There were no tournaments because of COVID. Like, it was basically just find your matches and hope to like get as many results as possible and play until the end of the season or the end of the regular season. And then Miracosta, being the team, the dominant team they were the heavy favorites to win CIF this year again. Like, it was looking really good for them. And then one match where they faced their crosstown rival Loyola, they wound up losing to them in 4. And then 2 days later, because they played Loyola on a Saturday, they played Newport Harbor on a Monday, which they lost that one. And then after that Newport Harbor match, one of their players tested positive for COVID-19, which they had to go into quarantine and halt everything there. So Miracosta basically had everything going wrong for them, and it looked like it was basically going to be a whirlwind of a nightmare for them. And then Miracosta won 8 straight matches, and they didn't even lose a set in the postseason until they lost that one set to Newport Harbor in the championship match. So, again, Miracosta has been through a whirlwind of emotions the past 3 years. So, for them to come out on top is rather impressive, and again, I can't say enough good about Miracosta. They just did everything correct, and it's hard. I will say this, I don't like how championship sites are being played at a designated home team. Like, one team could get the home court advantage, and that could be key because the other team might, hence the word might, have to travel quite a little ways. Like, the game was played at Miracosta's gymnasium, which is in Manhattan Beach. And then Newport Harbor is located in Newport Beach, so it's basically like a 45-minute drive from there, without traffic, mind you. Like, this is a Friday that was being played. It was supposed to be played on Saturday because, you know, every other final and championship match was being played on Saturday, but because Miracosta had prom, they decided to agree on Friday instead of Saturday, which I guess that sounds like a good deal. I think Newport Harbor also had prom as well, so there's that. But overall, I gotta tip my hat to Miracosta. You win with class, you lose with class. Yes, I'm semi-bitter about my Newport Harbor Sailors losing, but I'm also happy for the Mustangs that they were able to finally end that CIF title drought. So good job to Miracosta. They're the number 1 seed in the SoCal Regional Tournament, which is this week. The first round matchups consist of Newport Harbor, the number 4 seed, against Sage Creek, the number 5 seed. Then Clovis East takes on Loyola. Clovis East is the number 3 seed. Loyola is the number 6 seed. And then Poway of San Diego is the number 2 seed, surprisingly, as they take on Corona Del Mar, which is the number 7 seed. And Miracosta surprisingly has a bye, which I kind of don't agree with. I mean, Miracosta gets a bye, and then depending on what happens on Tuesday, depends on when they're gonna play. If, and hence the word if, Newport Harbor wins their matchup against Sage Creek on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, then they will have the honor of playing Miracosta most likely on Wednesday, because Thursday is Newport Harbor's graduation. And I said this on my personal Twitter account, which is in the description of the show, that I'd bet the farm that Newport Harbor and Miracosta, should they face each other in the SoCal Regionals, would face each other on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. So there's that right there. And I highly doubt they're going to play on Friday, because the winner of that matchup, or the winner of that semifinal, has to play on Saturday, and that's way too much of a turnaround. So this is what happens when CIF has to pretty much stretch its season, which is not really ideal because people are graduating. Like, there are even earlier graduations. Like, there are even teams that are like forfeiting games, or there are even players that are foregoing playing in the playoffs because their graduation is on a certain day. So if anything, this CIF, and this is not trying to bash them, and these are my opinions. Like, these are the thoughts of Teran Rodriguez's opinions, and not the thoughts and opinions of IE Sports Radio or any other second or third party organization. But So that's my little disclaimer right there. But CIF I understand because of COVID that everything had to be crammed into one season. Like basketball season had to be crammed into spring. Lacrosse season had to be jammed in there as well, along with soccer, and then track and field, and then boys and girls tennis. Everything had to be jammed into that one little spring season. So there's that right there. So that's my little spiel right there. And back to the SoCal Regionals. I fear it will be a quick turnaround for Newport Harbor if they have to play on Wednesday. But if for because their graduation on Thursday starts at 6, and I don't think there's any way they're going to play an early matchup on Thursday, then have a quick turnaround to get ready for their graduation, and then after their graduation, they have to go prepare for their grad night. So there's that right there. So that's my little thing on the SoCal Regionals right there. And I also got to give a big shout to Huntington Beach's boys volleyball team and their head coach Craig Pizzanti, who was a former guest of Set Point. His team was the runner-up in the CIF Southern Section Division 2 final, as they just fell short to Santa Barbara, losing in 5 sets. I admit that the Huntington Beach really gave Santa Barbara all it could handle. Like, they were down 2-0. They won the third set 31-29, and then they won the fourth set 25-21, and then unfortunately they just ran out of gas in set 5, which really sucks. But I'm really proud of the fact that Craig Pizzanti coached his team to almost their 6th championship in team history. So that team will also be participating in the SoCal Regionals. They are in Division 2, but the fact that they're even participating in this state tournament is quite astounding. They are the number 3 seed. They play La Costa Canyon on Tuesday at 6 p.m. And then if Huntington Beach beats La Costa Canyon, then Huntington Beach will most likely face Santa Barbara. But I'm pretty certain that Huntington Beach will face Santa Barbara in the semifinals. Like, Santa Barbara is pretty good, if you ask me. They're pretty good. And I'm actually going to see who Santa Barbara plays. They play Chatsworth, which is from the Los Angeles section. So it's not too far of a drive for Chatsworth, but Santa Barbara is still a very steep drive. Like, from Huntington Beach, it's a very brutal drive. And this is another reason why I do not like home sites for these teams. Like, I really just prefer neutral sites. But again, COVID happened, and unfortunately, this is what we had to deal with. So I digress, though. So that's going to do it for the high school volleyball portion of the show. One last shout out to Reese Clausen, the former Set Point guest, who had a great game against Miracosta for Newport Harbor. I believe he had like 7 or 8 kills. He still did a phenomenal job. Like, he did all that he could, but Miracosta is such a big team. They block the ball well, and their middles were just active offensively. So, again, I can't take anything away from Miracosta. And, again, this is their first championship since 2012. It's always good to have that little variety. So I'll just close the book right there. I will be talking about the SoCal Regionals next week, and it'll probably be the last week I get to talk about volleyball, whether it's for good or for bad. But I digress. So that's that for high school volleyball. Now let's jump over to some transfer news, because we all love transfer news. So last time we left off, we were on Erica Kostelak, who transferred from Creighton over to Cleveland State, as she is a graduate outside hitter. So moving on, we have Rookie of the Year Darina Kumanova, who is transferring from UMBC, as she is now in the transfer portal. So that's a big loss for UMBC, as they lost their Rookie of the Year. So that's a shame right there. Then we have Chloe Brown of Oregon State, who is a 5'10 junior 5'10 junior from this year, as she is transferring to Oregon. So she's basically going from Corvallis over to wherever the heck or the University of Oregon is. I'm blanking on its location name, but you know what I mean. So Chloe Brown is hopping over to and transferring to Oregon. Eugene, that's the place. Eugene, Oregon. Like I can't believe I didn't know that. Anyway, yeah, but Chloe Brown is transferring from Oregon State to Oregon to play beach volleyball, which is a big loss for Oregon State, but a big gain for Oregon as they get a 5'10 beach volleyball player, which is good stuff. So this next transfer was actually a big one, as Kylie DeBerg said that she was going to be transferring to play beach volleyball at LSU, which is one of the powerhouses in beach volleyball. But she also made note that she is also going to be playing indoor volleyball for LSU as well. So she went from Missouri over to LSU, and she'll be basically be playing outdoor and indoor volleyball. So it's going to be quite weird seeing Kylie DeBerg on the other side of the net when LSU and Missouri play. But that's a big get for LSU, and LSU had a decent season. The problem was they just didn't have that big standout win. So but that's huge for LSU, and I wish nothing but the best of luck for Kylie DeBerg. So then, in the transfer portal, we have Grace Wee, a former BYU player, as she is transferring from BYU and looking to explore where she's going to be at. Then making transfer news, we have KJ Johnson transferring from Baylor over to Fairfield. She is a 5'9" sophomore outside hitter. I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but she's kind of small for an outside hitter, but maybe she has the hops like Aaliyah Carter does of Kansas State. So we'll see. And then this transfer also kind of caught my eye. Nicole Druick, who is transferring from Nebraska and transferring over to Georgia Tech, where she will be playing for the Yellow Jackets. Druick is a 6'1" setter, and she's only a sophomore, so she's going to be sitting behind Maddie McKissock, unless of course Georgia Tech is running a 6'2" offense next year, which if they do, then that's going to be quite fascinating to see. So still a good option, good little pickup for Georgia Tech, so that's good news right there. And then heading into the transfer portal is CAA Libero of the Year, Logan Manuski, as she is transferring from the College of Charleston, and she'll be exploring her options. Then transferring from Florida State is Jessica Nunge, who played 2 seasons with the Seminoles, and now she is transferring over to Illinois, where she'll be playing in the Big Ten. She is a 6'2" outside hitter / opposite, and she's only a sophomore, so she's still got quite a good number of years left until she graduates. So then another transfer happening. This one is actually going to be in the SEC, as it's basically going to be going from team to team. Riley Fisher is transferring from Florida, and she'll be transferring to Ole Miss. Fisher is a 5'7" libero, and she's a junior, so she'll have one or two more years. I believe the format is that she's currently a junior, so I don't think her eligibility is a junior. I honestly think she has 2 more years, though. I think next year she's going to be a junior, but I digress. And then in the transfer portal is Brooke Phillips, as she is transferring from Lipscomb, as she played 2 seasons with the Bison, and she is exploring her options. Then transferring from the SEC over to the Big Ten is Paula Kriame, and I'm pronouncing that correct. It's Kriame, not Paula Sarame. It's Kriame. So Paula Kriame is transferring from Florida, and she is transferring to Indiana. She is a 5'8" libero, and she's going to be a junior. So there's that right there. And then we have Josie Cole of Oregon transferring to Tulane. So she is actually a beach volleyball player, and she is a graduate student. She's 5'11", so she brings some good height to Tulane. So that's some good news for Tulane and whatnot, so good for them. Then we have Sydney Stone, who is transferring from LaSalle because LaSalle's women's volleyball program is cut, which unfortunately makes me really sad. Like, it really sucks seeing the words volleyball program and the word being cut, which I'll be getting into that in a little bit. So, Sydney Stone is transferring from LaSalle, and she is looking for a new team, and hopefully she does find a new team, because nothing would suck than not being able to play the sport you love in college after all your hard work and whatnot. Anyway, now going back to the transfers, we have Carly Basham, a 5'8" libero and a sophomore, who is transferring from Texas A&M, and she'll be playing in the Pac-12 for Washington State. So that's some good news right there. I don't think it helps out their offensive problems, but I still think this isn't too terrible, but still, maybe they could utilize her quite a bit, so we'll have to see. And then the last bit of transfer news is Jordan Polo, as she is transferring from Cal to play for Florida State. She's actually a beach volleyball player, and she was named the Pac-12's Freshman of the Year. So that's a huge loss for Cal, and that's a huge get for Florida State, as Florida State is also one of the powerhouses in the NCAA beach volleyball scene. Unfortunately, they had themselves a brief NCAA tournament run, but with the addition of Jordan Polo, this could be quite something good for the Seminoles. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to see them have a deep NCAA tournament run next year. As unfortunately, I think they lost in the losers bracket quarterfinal, I want to say. Either way, they didn't have as deep of a run as I thought they would. I think I said they were one of the more disappointing teams in the NCAA beach volleyball tournament, but I digress. So that is currently all the transfer news leading up to this point. Currently, we are on Jordan Polo, or we're leaving off from Jordan Polo, and hopefully we will be seeing more transfer news there. Before we head to a commercial break, or before we move on from transfer news, I actually have some big news regarding players that will be staying or players that will be going from their respective NCAA beach, or not NCAA beach volleyball team, NCAA volleyball team in general. So, for starters, I don't think I mentioned this last week, and I don't think this news broke until the day after I did set point. But regardless, I did get news, and I did get word that Dana Rettke of Wisconsin, yes, the Dana Rettke, the standout Dana Rettke, who was an absolute beast for Wisconsin, the 4-time All-American, she is returning for a 5th year for Wisconsin. And that is huge right there, because Wisconsin's already returning 3 of their players that are seniors. So it is great to see Dana Rettke running it back. And I was on pins and needles wondering if she was going to be returning. And she wants to bring home a championship for Wisconsin. And unfortunately, Wisconsin fell short of that goal as they lost to eventual runner-up Texas in the semifinals, which, again, it was quite the bummer. Like, it was not the ending that they were hoping for, and I don't think anyone else was expecting that ending, but still. So, other news regarding teams that are going to be, or regarding players that are going to be coming back or going from their teams, I just got word that, before the show went on, that Caitlin Newton is planning to return for her 5th year for Purdue, because the NCAA allows everyone to have one more redshirt year, or one more year of eligibility. So Caitlin Newton is returning to Purdue for next season, and that is big news right there, considering Caitlin Newton was a beast for the Boilermakers, who made their first ever Elite 8 appearance in team history. Unfortunately, they fell short to Kentucky, which eventually wound up being the NCAA champion. So Purdue is looking good as of right now. They actually, with her returning, they actually only lose one player, and I don't even think that. Actually, no, they return both their players. So theoretically, Purdue returns its entire team, barring any other transfers. Because I also heard that Jenna Otek is returning for Purdue as well. So Purdue is going to be something really special to watch for next season. Because Purdue plays in the very tough Big Ten Conference, and that's home to like a lot of other talented teams such as Wisconsin, Penn State, Nebraska, Ohio State, the list goes on and on. So we'll see what happens next year. Like, I can't wait to see what happens when it comes to the Big Ten and every other women's volleyball conference and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to it. So that's pretty much that for all the NCAA volleyball player news and whatnot. So now let's jump over to some other big news that happened earlier this afternoon, as we actually got word that the U.S. Olympics women's volleyball team has been released, and there will be 12 players attending Tokyo for the 2020 Tokyo Games. Well, theoretically it's 2021, but you know what I mean. So your players from the 2020 U.S. women's roster when it comes to the U.S. women's volleyball team: Micah Hancock, formerly of Penn State; Jordan Poulter, University of Illinois. I might as well just say their position and their height. So Micah Hancock, 5'11" setter from Penn State; Jordan Poulter, 6'2" setter out of Illinois; Justine Wong Orantes, 5'6" libero out of Nebraska; Jordan Larson, 6'2" outside hitter from Nebraska; Annie Drews, 6'4" opposite out of Purdue; Jordan Thompson, 6'4" opposite out of Cincinnati; Michelle Barch Hackley, 6'3" outside hitter from Illinois; Kim Hill, 6'4" outside hitter from Pepperdine; Faluk, I am going to butcher this name, Faluk Akinradwo Gunderson, 6'3" middle blocker from Stanford; Haley Washington, 6'3" middle blocker from Penn State; Kelsey Robinson, 6'2" outside hitter from Nebraska; and rounding up the roster, Chiaka Obogu, 6'2" middle blocker from Texas. So those are your players from the 2020 women's volleyball Olympic roster. If I am doing my math correctly, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 players. 8 out of 12 of those players are from a Big Ten school. That is what we call representing. And then there's also the alternatives. So the alternatives, there are 6 alternatives. So the alternatives for the U.S. Women's Volleyball Olympic 2020 roster to Tokyo are Catherine Plummer, 6'6" outside hitter from Stanford; Tori Dixon, 6'3" middle blocker from Minnesota; Lauren Carlini, 6'2" setter from Wisconsin; Hannah Tapp, 6'3" middle blocker from Minnesota; Sarah Wilhite Parsons, 6'2" outside hitter from Minnesota; and rounding up the alternatives, Megan Courtney, 6'1" libero from Penn State. So altogether, when it comes to the alternatives and the official 12-player roster, there is a grand total of... Hold on, am I counting this correctly? I think I'm counting this correctly. There's 13 out of 18 players from the 12-player roster, and then the alternates that are from the Big Ten. Whew. Man, that's a lot. That is crazy. I'm just counting this up again. Let me just count this up again. Maybe it might be 12. Again, I'm sorry, y'all. Let me just mute my mic and count on my own. Yeah, it's 13 players, so that's quite astounding that the Big Ten has 13 out of 18 players that are on the Olympic roster, whether they're alternates or they're actually on the official roster, which is mind-blowing. Whew. So yeah, I'm doing my math correct. So yeah, it's quite amazing. So big shout out to the Big Ten. So I'm looking forward to seeing that team do its thing in the Olympics. I will also say this: it's a very talented roster. I will for sure say that. However, I kind of feel Catherine Plummer, and this could be because maybe I'm from the West Coast, maybe I'm from Orange County, maybe I'm a Catherine Plummer stan, but I think Catherine Plummer would have been a great addition to the U.S. Olympic team, like the official 12-player team. I know she's an alternate, but I think she would have been great as an official member. Like, don't get me wrong, the other 12 players definitely deserve it, but I think Catherine Plummer, with her 6'6" height, and she has played setter before, would have done great wonders for the U.S. Olympic team. But I guess she'll be able to be an alternate just in case something bad happens. But I'm looking forward to seeing the Olympic team in action this summer. And then the head coach of the team will be Karch Kurali. And I'm probably butchering that last name, but it is what it is. But I digress. So either way, that is your U.S. Olympic women's volleyball roster, and we look forward to seeing what can happen with them. So now let's jump over to the U.S. Women's national team that's been playing in the national volleyball. The VNL, the Volleyball Nations League. So I can't believe why was that so tough to say? But the U.S. Women's National Volleyball Team is playing in the Volleyball Nations League, and currently they are undefeated. They are the only undefeated team so far. They are 8-0, and they have won 24 out of a possible 25 sets, which is absolutely amazing. The closest team behind USA is Turkey, which is 7-1, but Turkey isn't undefeated as Turkey lost to the Dominican Republic in 4 sets today, which is surprising. They lost today. Wow. Interesting. Seems logical. Anyway, so the U.S. won their matchup today against South Korea. They won 25-16, 25-12, and 25-15. So quite the quick little matchup there. Tomorrow, the U.S. plays Italy, and then they'll have themselves a little bit of a break. They'll play at 12 p.m. Pacific time, and after their matchup with Italy tomorrow, they will have themselves a little break from Wednesday all the way till Friday, but then they are back on Saturday when they play Belgium at 6 a.m. Pacific time, and that's kind of where their schedule starts to get a little bit tougher. So Belgium is currently 9th, they're 4-3. That's not bad, but it's going to be better than facing Italy. Italy currently is 14th, they are 1-6, and I feel for them. I digress though. But then after USA plays Belgium, they play Japan, which is Sunday, which Japan is actually a very tough opponent, and Japan is actually one of their rivals. I can say that for all their teams in the VNL, but I think Japan is one of their closest rivals. Japan is 6-2, so they're not too far back. They're 4th in the standings. And then after that, the U.S. gets to play Turkey on Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So that Turkey matchup is going to be what could make or break their chances of finishing first, which I don't know if there's any trophy or reward or number 1 seed being rewarded or playoffs that are going to be happening, but it would be great if the U.S. were to actually win that match against Turkey. I think they can. The Dominican Republic is currently the 4th or the 7th best team in the standings, while Turkey is the 2nd best team. So the fact that Turkey lost to the Dominican Republic kind of makes me raise an eyebrow or two. But if the U.S. can't underestimate anybody, especially not Turkey, and especially not even their worst opponents. So it's going to be fun to see what the U.S. can do when it comes to the rest of the VNL. So there's that. I actually don't know how the men are doing. I don't think they're doing as good as the women are. No, they are not. And the men are actually in 9th place in the standings. They are currently 3-3, which unfortunately sucks, but you can't win them all. So the U.S. are currently on a 2-game losing skid. They lost to Australia on Saturday in 3 sets, and they also lost to Poland in 3 sets. The Australia matchup, they lost 25-23, 25-20, and 25-17. And then against Poland, they lost 25-17, 28-26, and then 25-17. So it hasn't really been the same ever since they last beat Argentina and whatnot. So we'll see if they can get it together or something. But for right now, it's looking like and they also lost to Russia. So wait, what? I'm reading that incorrectly. The U.S. beat Australia on Saturday. They beat them 25-23, 25-20, 25-17. And then they lost to Poland, and they also lost to Russia in 4 sets. So the U.S. lost to Russia 25-22, 25-19, 17-25, 25-19, and then they lost to Poland in those straight sets. So currently the U.S. is 3-3, and curse this little list that continues to expand and whatnot, because I was having a tough time functioning the whole expand list thing. So that's my bad, y'all. I'm sorry. The U.S. men's team is 3-3. They'll look to try to salvage some wins. No one is undefeated though in that whole little standings thing. So we'll see what happens with the U.S. men's team. I hope they can get it together for their sake, but it's going to be tough. This week they play Iran on Wednesday. Iran is the number 6 team. They are 4-2. That is a 9 a.m. start time. Then on Thursday, the U.S. play the Germany. They are also 3-3. They are just above the U.S. in the standings at the number 8 spot. And then on Friday, the U.S. plays Serbia. Serbia is the number 7 team in the standings. So they play them on Friday at 9 a.m., and then they give themselves a little bit of a break from Saturday all the way till Monday, and then they're back at it on Tuesday when they take on Italy. Italy is the 13th best team in these standings. They are 2-4, so who knows? Maybe they could salvage some wins. Maybe. France, they also have France, which is going to be really tough. They're tied for first atop the standings, but they are currently in 3rd place via tiebreaker. So there's that. But overall, the men's national team isn't as good as the women's national team when it comes to the Volleyball Nations League. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We can't expect perfection from everybody. It's kind of like the men's soccer team and the women's soccer team. the women's national soccer team is completely amazing, while the men's soccer team is kind of if you ask me. Except they actually won their matchup against Mexico from yesterday, so gotta give them a shout out. But this isn't Soccer Scoreboard Show. This is Set Point. But you can check out the Soccer Scoreboard Show every Sunday afternoon, primarily at 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but it's mainly been going on at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Regardless, definitely do check out the Soccer Scoreboard Show, hosted by Andrew Hagenbaugh, a great host who knows a lot about soccer. He not only does the MLS, but he also does the Bundesliga, the Premier League, the Liga MX. The list goes on and on. So definitely do check out Soccer Scoreboard Show. So there is that. But that is that for the professional international news that's been going on for the U.S. teams. We're actually going to take ourselves a quick little break. When we come back, we got some NVA to talk, as this is the last event of the season, and then what'll happen is we'll have to see the standings, and we'll have to see what's going to happen in the playoffs, if they decide to have playoffs, which we're still trying to find out, but we'll see. Regardless, you are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after a word from these little messages.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. They're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back with segment number 2 of Set Point. You can catch all of our amazing shows on IE Sports Radio. You can listen on different streaming platforms such as Spreaker, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict, TuneIn. The list goes on and on. So definitely do check out all of our amazing shows, such as Gloves Off with Marcus Losgreat. I definitely am looking forward to seeing what Marcus has to say about that Floyd Mayweather fight, an exhibition, as Floyd Mayweather took on Logan Paul in an exhibition fight, which I'm looking forward to seeing what Marcus has to say. I'm not going to spoil anything. If you didn't watch it, then I feel bad for you. But I didn't watch it either. But I just was following along on Twitter. So, haha. Regardless, definitely do check out my brother, Marcus Losgreat, every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time here on iSports Radio. He does an outstanding job with Gloves Off. It is a combat sports show. It talks about boxing, MMA, and all things combat sports. And you definitely want to check out Marcus. And it's going to talk about UFC as well. So anyway, now let's jump over to segment number 2 of Set Point. And we're probably going to brief this one just because I already went over a lot of everything in the first set. We went over the high school boys volleyball championship that happened in California. We also went over the U.S. Olympic national team. We went through the transfer news, and then we also talked about the Volleyball Nations League when it came to the men and the women. So now let's jump on over to the NVA. So this is the last week of the NVA, and teams are going to want to try to improve their league standing. So the first matchup that's going to be going on, and this is going to be starting on June 11th, which is Friday. So on June 11th, the final event of the NVA is going to be happening. It's titled Event Number 3, but this is the last event of the NVA regular season, and this will be taking place at the Pierce Sports Center in San Bernardino. Last I checked, this is actually the second time this sports facility hosted an event for the NVA, so there's that right there. So as for the matchups, on June 11th, which is a Friday, the first matchup will feature the Texas Tyrants taking on the Ontario Matadors. That is a 9 a.m. Pacific time start time for that matchup, so I'm looking forward to seeing the host Ontario team taking on the Texas Tyrants. The Tyrants have been hot as of late, as I actually also got to pull up my NVA standings, which if I can, there they are. So they're the standing. I have the standings, which I'll be going over in a little bit. So the Texas Tyrants take on the Ontario Matadors at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So that's the first matchup. And then the second matchup is going to be Southern Exposure taking on Team Freedom. That's going to be an 11 a.m. Pacific start time. Then at 2 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Los Angeles Blaze taking on the Utah Stingers. Then at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Dallas Tornadoes, still in search of their first win, taking on the red-hot Las Vegas Ramblers. And then closing off the day, we have the Chicago Untouchables taking on the Orange County Stunners. That's going to be a 7 p.m. Pacific time start for that match. And that is going to be the first day of the event number 3 in the books. On Saturday, June 12th, we have the Las Vegas Ramblers and Team Freedom kicking off the first batch of matches in event number 3. The Ramblers and Team Freedom will be facing each other at 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's actually a crucial match right there, considering both those teams are 5-1 in their respective conferences. And that could be a finals preview, so I'm looking forward to that. Then we have the Orange County Stunners taking on the Los Angeles Blaze, another form of Los Angeles County versus Orange County matchup. The Stunners and the Blaze will be facing each other at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And then at 2 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Ontario Matadors taking on the Dallas Tornadoes. And then after that, at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Chicago Untouchables taking on the Texas Tyrants. And then closing off the matchup at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Utah Stingers taking on Southern Exposure. That is, once again, a 7 p.m. Pacific time. And that wraps up day number 2 of event number 3. Then the final day of the NVA regular season, we have Team Freedom taking on the Texas Tyrants. That is a 9 a.m. Pacific start time. Then at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, we have the Utah Stingers taking on the Chicago Untouchables. that could actually be a crucial matchup for the American Conference. But we'll see. Both the Stingers are currently all alone in they're tied for second place with the Texas Tyrants. So Texas could also be a crucial matchup. Could also be fighting for playoff positioning as well. So once again, that Utah Stingers versus Chicago Untouchables matchup is at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Then at 2 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Orange County Stunners taking on the Dallas Tornadoes. Hopefully Dallas does win one match this season. I know they're an expansion team. They're still learning. But I hope they're able to, at least make it respectable. It would be great if they actually pulled off a win. But against the Orange County Stunners, they'll have to get past the Great Wall of Nicomado. But we'll see. And then at 4 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Los Angeles Blaze taking on Southern Exposure. And then the last match of event number 3 on Sunday is going to be between the Las Vegas Ramblers and the Ontario Matadors. That is slated for 7 p.m. Pacific time. I like how that is a 3-hour gap difference compared to the Orange County Stunners Dallas Tornadoes versus matchup and the Los Angeles Blaze and Southern Exposure matchup. I don't know why it's formatted like that. Maybe they made an error when it came to the Los Angeles Blaze and Southern Exposure matchup, as that should be a 4:30 p.m. Pacific time start, but it all depends on what happens with Orange County and Dallas. So those are the matchups right there, and let us look at the standings currently. These are the current update standings because the ones on the NVA are somewhat inaccurate. So in the American Conference, we have the Las Vegas Ramblers in first place at 5-1. The Utah Stingers and the Texas Tyrants are both tied for second place at 4-2. The Chicago Untouchables are 3-3 in fourth place in the American Conference, and the Los Angeles Blaze is bringing up the rear at 2-4. Then in the National Conference, we have Team Freedom leading the way at 5-1, followed by Southern Exposure at 3-3, and then the Ontario Matadors and the Orange County Stunners are both 2-4. And then, like I said, the Dallas Tornadoes are looking for their first win of its expanded franchise's history, as they are 0-6. Again, they're a recent team, so I shouldn't say history, but it's a short history. So yeah, don't go off of the NVA. The NVA, whatchamacallit, the NVA website, because it says they're 3-3, but that's not correct right there. The Ramblers have only lost one match, as well as Team Freedom. So there's that right there. But that is that for the NVA. Let's actually break down these matchups. Actually, let's break down these matchups. So Texas versus Ontario. So Ontario is 2-4, while Texas is 4-2. If Texas wants to have any hope of maybe making one last push in the American Conference, they're going to need to run the table, and they're going to need to hopefully get some help from some of the other teams that are taking on the Ramblers. I could see Texas beating Ontario. I hate saying that because Ontario is kind of the host team. But I think Texas has really come a long way. I believe they're in their second little event of the season, or of their team's history, their short history, as they've come quite a bit of a long way, and the fact that they're only one game out of first place is quite astounding. So I'm pretty sure Texas is going to win. Then we have Southern Exposure taking on Team Freedom. Team Freedom is actually sitting pretty in the National Conference, and Southern Exposure is trying to catch up to Team Freedom. Team Freedom did have a little bit of a blip on the radar against the Ontario Matadors a couple weeks ago, but they're still sitting pretty. Southern Exposure could pretty much lock up the National Conference and winning that conference outright and not having to share it with Southern Exposure. So if Southern Exposure wants any hope of winning the National Conference, they're going to have to run the table, and then Team Freedom is going to have to lose out. But still, we'll have to see. But I think Team Freedom's going to win this matchup. I'm not going to try to go full on prediction mode, but based on what I'm seeing, I think Team Freedom is going to win. Then we have the Los Angeles Blaze versus the Utah Stingers. The Blaze are dead last in the American Conference, while the Stingers are still right behind the Las Vegas Ramblers. The Stingers are 4-2, and with how close that race is between Las Vegas and Texas, I can expect Utah to pull out all the stops against the Blaze. And then finally, the second to last matchup of the day, we have Dallas versus the Ramblers. If Dallas pulls off this win, I'll be kind of shocked, but I can see the Ramblers just pulling out the win just because the Ramblers are very talented, and nothing is really going to stop. Has really slowed them down quite a bit this season. And then lastly, we have the Orange County Stunners taking on the Chicago Untouchables. Orange County is 2-4, while Chicago is 3-3. Orange County got back on track after they went 0-3 in their first event. However, they probably at least want to finish the season strong, and who knows, maybe even improve their ranking in the national conference. I highly doubt they can win the conference, considering they would need a bunch of other scenarios to happen. They'd need Team Freedom to lose out. They need Southern Exposure to beat Team Freedom and then lose out of their own. And then I think they also need and then first and foremost, they need themselves to win out, and then they also need Ontario to lose one match and whatnot. So Orange County needs a lot of good things to happen for them if they want to somehow clinch at least a share of the national conference. So there's that. But I could see Orange County beating Chicago. It's not impossible, but Chicago is actually playing better. They actually went 3-0 last event, so we'll see what the Untouchables can do. Then we move over to day number 2 of event number 3. We have the Las Vegas Ramblers taking on Team Freedom. This is going to be a very fun matchup. It's the best team in the National Conference and the best team in the American Conference. Either one of those teams could win, and this could be a finals preview if there are, playoffs happening, which I'm pretty sure there will be, because I don't see how they won't be able to have playoffs if they're just not going to have if they're having a regular season, there should be playoffs, so there's that. I can't really tell who's going to win. I'd probably put my money on Las Vegas if I had to, but don't underestimate Team Freedom. Then we have Orange County versus Los Angeles, the Blaze versus the Stunners. The Stunners, like I said, they're trying to finish strong while Los Angeles is trying to salvage as many wins. I think Orange County, wanting to improve its win-loss record and wanting to finish strong, is going to beat the Blaze. Nothing against Los Angeles, but I think the Stunners are looking to just move on from that 0-3 start. They're gonna try to prove to everybody that 0-3 start was nothing more than them not having Nick Amato, because he was injured with a foot injury. He's back and better though, so that's good for him and Orange County. Then we have Ontario versus Dallas. Ontario is theoretically the host of this little event, so I'd bet money that they beat the Tornadoes. I'm not trying to demoralize the Tornadoes, but I just think that Dallas is still has a lot to learn. But if there was any chance they would win a match, it would probably be this one, but we'll see. Then we have the Chicago Untouchables taking on the Texas Tyrants. Like I said, the Texas Tyrants are still within striking distance of the American Conference title. They still need quite a few things to go their way. And then they're taking on the Chicago Untouchables, which surprisingly is also still in range of winning the American Conference. But if Texas continues to play its cards right, then they're most likely going to win this match. I will say this about the Untouchables. They are hot as of late, but Texas is also hot as well. Texas also went 3-0 in the event number 2 and whatnot, so it's going to be a battle of which team is either hot as of right now or which team is going to have to end one team's winning streak. Like, something's got to give. And then the last match of the day is the Utah Stingers taking on Southern Exposure. The Stingers, like I said, are still in striking distance of the Ramblers, while Southern Exposure needs pretty much everything to go their way. Southern Exposure has improved, but I can pretty much see Utah just taking this one, just because they have a high level of talent. But I wouldn't be shocked if Southern Exposure just gave Utah all it can handle. So then the final day of event number 3 is Team Freedom versus the Texas Tyrants. Team Freedom can, like I said, they are in pretty much all they just need to do is just win one more match, and then poof, they're champions. Especially if they beat Southern Exposure, then they will be the champions of the National Conference. Again, the Tyrants are nothing to sneeze at, and it wouldn't shock me if the Texas Tyrants actually beat Team Freedom. But I think it's going to be a great matchup regardless. I have Team Freedom winning that if I had to put money on it, but I am not a gambling man. I know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and I know when to walk away and know when to run. If you get that reference, then you're awesome. But I digress. So that's that for the Team Freedom Texas Tyrants matchup. Then we have the Utah Stingers versus the Chicago Untouchables. Chicago could attempt to play spoiler to Utah, but I think Utah, depending on what happens with Chicago, is going to beat them. Like, if Utah manages to lose their way out of the American Conference title, then I could see Chicago somewhat surprising Utah, but I got Utah winning this one. It won't be an easy outing, though, so there's that. Then we have the Orange County Stunners taking on the Dallas Tornadoes. Again, this is the matchup of hopefully Dallas can salvage a win, whereas Orange County is looking to finish strong and finish with a 500 record. Not that it's going to matter, but they're proving to everybody that event number 1 was kind of fluky just because they weren't at full strength and whatnot. So there's that. Then we have the Los Angeles Blaze taking on Southern Exposure. The Blaze, like I said, they too are also looking to finish strong, while Southern Exposure is looking to turn heads, because Southern Exposure has done a pretty good job this season, as Southern Exposure was once a first-year program, and now they are looking quite experienced, and they're looking very promising, and I think Southern Exposure is going to win this one. If I was a gambling man, I'd say Southern Exposure is going to win, but who's to say? And then lastly is the Las Vegas Ramblers against the Ontario Matadors. Look, I'm a big fan of the Ontario Matadors opening the final event of the season and closing the event, because they are the home team theoretically. But I see the Las Vegas Ramblers just not tearing them apart, but just finishing strong and just putting the exclamation on that American Conference League. But the Matadors, if there's something I learned about the Matadors last week when they defeated Team Freedom, it's that they're not to be underestimated, especially since they're the home team. Like, they're quite respectable of defending their home court and whatnot. So, who knows? Besides, this is the NVA. Anything could happen. So, there is that right there when it comes to event number 3 and its matchups and the little breakdown and little scenario. Like, Team Freedom is in control of their own destiny. All they need is just one more win, and the exclamation point would be against Southern Exposure. And then, meanwhile, Utah is still... They just need to control their own destiny, because I know they can beat Ontario, but they're not to underestimate them. Then I also know that the Ramblers are also going to beat the Tornadoes. Their only tricky matchup this weekend is the matchup against Team Freedom, which is going to be a very fun matchup. It's the battle of only one-loss teams, depending on what happens in day number 1 of event number 3. But it's really going to be a great little event, and I'm excited for what the playoffs have in store. Actually going to see what the championship has in store. No, it doesn't have a schedule for I like how it says this Liga, like it's Liga MX, but maybe that's the proper way of saying league or whatnot. because it's a sport that's international and whatnot. But there are no international teams. Regardless, there are no championship schedules at the moment, but who's to say? But that's going to do it for the NVA standings and the matchups that are going to be happening this week in event number 3. And that is pretty much going to do it for today's show. I've pretty much gone over everything, whether it's NCAA volleyball transfer news, high school volleyball, the professional volleyball over the U.S. women's and men's national team. The men's national Olympic team hasn't been released, but actually there is one more thing I gotta go over, and I believe it's the U.S. national beach team. I just gotta pull that up really quick. My apologies for any delay. And actually, no, there's still a couple more things I need to go over. So I actually got to go over Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clayson, the outstanding job they are doing in the beach scene this year, as they actually have clinched an automatic berth for the Olympics, and they can't finish anywhere lower than second in the Olympic ranking. So, and keep in mind, these are like two players. Kelly Clayson, Sarah Sponsel are both, I want to say they're both like in their 20s. Like, I'm actually going to look up Sarah Sponsel's. Yeah, she's 24 years old. Yes, Sponsel is 24 years old, and then Kelly Clace is 25 years old. So they're in their mid-20s, and they are going to the Olympics, and they're, like I said, they are the youngest. Let me say that again. They are the youngest pair in beach volleyball Olympic history to qualify for the Olympics. So that is absolutely amazing. They just won their second gold medal in their event, while Brooke Sweat and Carrie Walsh-Jennings will finish third after falling in the Ostrava qualifier. And this is quite astounding for Kelly Clace and Sarah Sponsel. Like, the fact that they haven't really been together for too long. They have been together for quite a while, but the fact that they have won 2 gold medal events when it comes to the qualifying, when it comes to these qualifying events, and the fact that they're going to be second, they can finish no lower than second in the Olympic rankings, and another fact that they have also beaten the A team, April Ross and Alex Kleinman, speaks to all volumes that these two teams are the future. I'm not going to say they're the next Misty May and April Ross. That's a little bit of a stretch right there. But this duo, Kelly Clace and Sarah Sponsel, are turning heads in the beach volleyball world, and they could be something special in the near future when it comes to U.S. Olympic beach volleyball. Like, I can't wait to see what they can do. Do I think they can have a deep run? Of course. Do they still have a lot to learn? Of course. They're in their mid-20s, and some of these players are already experienced and whatnot. So, and on the topic of beach volleyball, the U.S. beach collegiate teams have been named, the men's and women's beach teams. So we'll start with the women, because ladies first. So the 2021 Women's Beach Collegiate National Team consists of Alina Chacon from Florida State, Lexi Denneberg from UCLA, Charlie Ekstrom from Stanford, Taryn Cloth from LSU, Megan Kraft from USC. Why do they put Louisiana State and not LSU? That looks so weird. Who says Louisiana State anymore? It's LSU. Come on now. Anyway, Taryn Cloth of LSU, Megan Kraft of USC, Kristen Noose of LSU, Amy Ozzie of Cal Poly, Megan Rice of LMU, or Loyola Marymount, which that's understandable, Julia Scholes of USC, Savvy Simo of UCLA, Brooke Van Sickle of Hawaii, Tori Van Winden of Florida State and Cal Poly, and Abby Van Winkle of UCLA. The head coach of the U.S. Women's Collegiate National Beach Volleyball team is John Mayer, and the assistant coach is Megan Owosu. I don't think she's related to Uchenna Nwosu of... Oh, wait, no, that's Nwosu. I'm saying Owosu, so I digress. Then we also have the men's beach collegiate national team roster. So, for those of you wondering if there's actually men's volleyball happening, there you go. So, the 2021 men's beach collegiate national team roster consists of Kyle Anima from Vanguard University of Costa Mesa, Jonathan Bowles of UC Irvine, Tim Brewster of UCLA, Noah Dyer of Pepperdine, Ray Hart from St. Catherine, Heath Hughes of Grand Canyon, or GCU, Caleb Jennis of Ball State, Luke Lenton of Ohio State, Francisco Sani of UC Irvine, John Schwengel of Santa Monica College. That's actually a community college right there, for those wondering. But that's actually huge. A junior college player making a men's beach collegiate national team. That's huge right there. That just goes to show you that junior college athletes can make it big time as well. And junior college is a great route for any athlete, or anyone in general. But I digress. Anyway, John Schwengel from Santa Monica College, Charlie Siragusa from UC San Diego, Grant Sloan of UCLA. I thought he was on UC San Diego, but I guess he transferred. I digress, though. And then Tanner Woods from Jamestown. And then the head coach of the 2021 men's beach collegiate national team roster is Danko, I'm going to butcher his last name, Danko Iordanov of St. Catherine, and then the assistant coach will be Hudson Bates from Ohio State. So those are your men's and women's beach collegiate national team rosters. Now that's going to do it for today's episode of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in, and unless I'm missing something, we have pretty much covered everything when it comes to beach volleyball, indoor volleyball, and then the Olympic team, and then the collegiate national team. And one thing to note is that Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clace won the Ostrava 4-star tournament as they beat they beat their opponent 21-18 and 21-15. I'm not even going to try to pronounce their last names, as they once again, like I said earlier, they clinched their second consecutive gold medal and they won their second event. It's absolutely amazing that the future is looking bright for USA Beach Volleyball, and the fact that these two players who are that are only in their mid-20s are actually doing great things are looking absolutely amazing. And they're the youngest duo to qualify for the Olympics and whatnot. And also, there's one more thing I gotta add. Sarah Sponsel is a UCLA Bruin, and Kelly Clace is a USC Trojan. So, who said USC and UCLA players can't, do great things together? I don't want to hear it. So, there's that for all the beach volleyball news, and it would be quite astounding if Clace and Sponsel both finished number one in the Olympic rankings. That would be huge for them. But other than that, that's going to be it for this episode of Set Point. Once again, thank you all for tuning in to episode 93 of Set Point. Once again, gotta give one more little quick shout out to the SoCal Warriors. If you are looking to join their team, definitely reach out to their head coach. Once again, you can follow them on social media at Southern SoCal Warriors on Twitter, and then you can follow them on Instagram at SouthernCalifornia_Warriors, and then they're also on Facebook as well. So definitely do check out the SoCal Warriors, as they are the ones that are helping keep the lights on at IE Sports Radio. And I'd like to thank you, the fans, for continuing your support of IE Sports Radio, because without you, we're not probably doing this right now, because we are by the fans, for the fans, and we represent for as long as we can. And we appreciate all of your support through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad, and for all of our shows. Without any further delay, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, for me to get on out of here. And it is that time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Once again, thank you all for tuning in to tonight's episode of Set Point. Thank you to Adam Karnick for popping in the chat room. He says second half of the Monday crew, and he says better half with a question mark. And I appreciate that, Adam. Thank you for passing me the baton. And then thank you to Davidson Crooks for popping in the chat room. And a big shout to everyone at IE Sports Radio who continues to do their thing. I for sure will be back on Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, 5 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to feel good to be back on my original time. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourselves a great rest of the week. Enjoy the start of summer, and I will see you for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Maybe even something earlier. Peace.